to Total Health Talks. This is our next edition. As you know, we do it on the second Saturday every month. We do a Total Health Talk on a different area of health and nutrition. Today we're doing a talk on depression and holistic and naturopathic approaches to treating nutrition. My name is Dr. John Stiteler, and I'm a licensed counselor as well as a doctor of naturopathic psychology. And with me we have...
My name is Covyn. I'm an acupuncturist here at Total Health Guidance.
And I'm Tony, massage therapist and wellness coordinator here at Total Health Guidance. And I'll be kind of interacting with you guys on Facebook Live, so I'm not ignoring you. Just let you know that.
Okay. Well, I want to let you know what we do here at Total Health Guidance. We truly are an integrated healthcare option for the mind, body, spirit. I know when you hear mind, body, spirit, that's a tagline a lot of people use. There's not a lot of places that truly do that. So we have some people here in the audience as well as on Facebook Live. And when you think about mind, body, spirit, we like to think of it as a wheel, the wheel of your life. If anything is going wrong and your wheel is out of balance, like you get a flat tire, and you're chugging along, you're not performing at optimal health. And when the spokes in your wheel, if you think of the spoke of being physically healthy, emotionally solid, relationally connected, spiritually strong, financially secure. I mean, these are all different spokes in our wheel. And what we do here at Total Health Guidance is we look at the whole picture. So we have, consumer credit counselors and relational therapists, marriage and family therapists, and nutritional experts, and people that work on the body and internal medicine. So we look at all these things together to really help holistic health. So when you think of depression, let me just ask some people in the audience here. When you think of depression, what do you think of? What comes to mind? What does that look like when you think of somebody that has depression?
I think of just a dark state of being, I'm not motivated.
Okay, so really dark state,
Yeah.
Unmotivated, okay.
Yeah.
Sadness.
Just sadness, yeah, okay. Anything else come to mind?
Sometimes I think about a lack of feeling anything positive.
Just a lack of feeling at all. Yeah, that's a great point, because depression looks different for different people, and there are different types of depression. When we think of depression, clinically, oftentimes the word depression is associated with major depressive disorder, which is the diagnostic statistical manual. That's the clinical thing. When somebody has depression, they think of major depressive disorder. And that's one thing, but there's other types of depression, like just grief and sadness. Sometimes when you think of just sadness, like, that's normal. Everybody, sadness is just a feeling. So we all go through sadness and grief and loss. We call those adjustment disorders. When you go through a divorce or death of a loved one or loss of a job or all those things like that, those are other areas of sadness. We know about postpartum depression. So there's all different levels of depression. Dysthymia is just kind of a low-grade depression that lasts. It's not as severe as a major depressive disorder, but it lasts for a period of 2 years or more. It's just sort of a flat, unmotivated place, But oftentimes depression isn't so much feeling bad as much as it is not feeling. Like you mentioned, just not. I feel numb. I don't feel anything at all. That's typically more associated with the major depressive disorders. So let's start with looking at maybe some of the myths, the misnomers. When you think about depression, why don't you?
Yeah. So on the subject of depression, I feel like there's a lot of myths and misnomers, which is kind of why we wanted to bring out those points in discussion. And so one of the first ones is depression isn't real, and you can just snap out of it. So how would you respond to that?
I mean, obviously depression is real. So we know, with major depressive disorder, approximately 7% of the U.S. population right now is dealing with depression. Okay, so it's a common disorder. And it's also one of the most treatable disorders. That's the good news. And over the course of a lifetime, approximately 17 to 18% of adults will suffer depression sometime during their lifetime. So that's a lot. Like 1 out of every 6 people, something in that neighborhood, will suffer from depression. So it is a real issue, just like the cold or the flu or some other physical symptoms. Depression is real, it's diagnosable, and it is treatable.
Yeah, something I was learning in the research for this talk was actually depression is the #1 cause of disability in the U.S. We kind of think of disability as, oh, you know, I threw my back out, or I had some sort of trauma on the work site or something like that, and that's why you're in disability. But depression is tough. So definitely a real, and definitely something you can't snap out of, which kind of brings us to the next myth, was that depression will go away on its own. Any thoughts on that one?
Well, sometimes aspects of depression will go away on their own. Like, because if we talked about depression being associated with like an adjustment disorder, if you're going through a loss, first you want to ask yourself, is the situation depressing? You know, if your spouse dies, that's depressing. You should feel depressed. If you go through a divorce, if you lose a pet, it should be depressing. It is sad, and it's a loss. And normally, when people go through any kind of loss, we go through the stages of grief. You know, there's the shock and the denial, like this is not happening. I can't believe this is happening. But, you know, there's the anger phase. Wow, you know, I can't believe this. Why did they leave me? Why did they have to go? There's the depression stage, where you just sit in the sadness and you miss and you cry and you feel that. But with normal adjustment disorders, we come through that and we go through the bargaining and the other phases, and we come out to the acceptance phase. Over time, we find new meaning and new purpose. Not that it's all happy that this bad thing happened, but we find new meaning and we do move through it. But in some cases, if it's major depressive disorder or some other areas of depression, we need other things to help. It's not just going to go away on its own. You can't just snap yourself out or try to think good thoughts to clear your mind. Other things need to happen.
I think to that point, you know, the understanding is that it is sort of a mental illness. It may only be a mental illness for a short period of time, but if you're sick, if your body's hurting, if you have an injury, you're going to go get treated. So the same thing with depression. You need to find something, some avenue to help you through the process, or it may take longer. If not, it may stay, you know, for extended periods of time. So it is an illness or a situation or a condition maybe for a time. So doing something to help change that and get us back to our normal state is really important. Can't ignore it and just think it'll go away, because it won't.
Good point. Another myth: depression is for people who have had hard lives or are crazy.
Okay. Well,
That was kind of packed.
Yeah. We don't usually use the crazy word here, but so hard lives, like, as I mentioned with the adjustment disorder, sometimes depression is due to a hard life event, and that would be a normal thing. Now, even going through an adjustment disorder, when I said you go through it, some of these things will relieve, some of the symptoms will relieve on their own, it's wise and good to have help going through that. Whether that's a therapist, whether it's a support group, a best friend, somebody that can help you, a pastoral counselor, somebody that can help you, guide you through those adjustments. So sometimes it can be due to a hard life. There's multiple things that impact depression. So one of them is the environmental factors, those hard life experiences. One of it is genetics. Okay, genetics does play a part in depression. Environmental factors, nutritional factors, some of the things we're going to get into, and physical ailments. So there are things like thyroid disorders, brain tumors, vitamin deficiencies. All those things can mimic depression. They will result in the symptoms of depression, but really it's more of a physiological, biological issue than a mental or emotional issue.
Which is kind of why you have to take that holistic review of depression and not just seeing it as solely mental, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit later.
Depression is often looked at, another myth that we're going to go to, which is depression is self-imposed, or like a lack of willpower, or that you're weak mentally. That's a big myth, so you guys want to speak on that?
Yeah, I mean, we touched on a little bit there that, you know, so depression is not self-imposed. Now, are there negative self-talk? You know, we know the studies have all been out there that 80 to 90% of the self-talk that we tell ourselves is negative. You know, so we say things like, "Oh, I'm such a loser. Why do I always do this? I'm so stupid." Or, you know, we beat ourselves up a lot. And those things certainly can add to depressive thoughts. Or when we're in a period of depression, an adjustment disorder or major depressive or dysthymia, if we're continuing to tell ourselves those negative thoughts, it can result in the depression lingering or lasting longer. So that's why having a therapist or having somebody that's going to help you see the link, see the negative thinking, and replace the negative thinking. You can't change your feelings, but you can change your thoughts. And the changing of the thoughts can, think of the thoughts of like as the engine of a train, okay? And the feelings are the caboose, okay? We don't lead the train by the caboose. We lead the train by the engine. So the caboose, the feelings follow our thoughts. So if we're thinking negative thoughts, the feelings will also end up being negative. So we have to work to change some of the neural pathways in our thinking of the right thoughts, and then the feelings will follow.
Okay, another myth, depression is a lack of faith or a sin.
Yeah, I think this is hard for a lot of people that are coming from a deep personal spiritual walk. And they think like, oh gosh, because the Bible talks about, don't worry, or, cast your cares on Jesus, or things like that. And people feel guilt, and sometimes that guilt and the shame adds to the depression. So we look at it again. One of the spokes in our wheel is to be spiritually healthy, and we'll define that a little bit later. What that means. Obviously, that's different for different people. But people that are coming from a place of personal faith, it's important for them to realize that even in Scripture, whether from the Jewish faith or the Christian faith or the Islamic faith, there are examples in all of those religious books, scriptures, that will identify people, godly people that were esteemed that had depression. So in the Old Testament, Jeremiah, we would probably look at Jeremiah as having major depressive disorder. It was something that lasted more than 2 years. It was a long time period of despair. King David, Moses went through times of where they were grieving deeply, and the sadness more of like an adjustment disorder. I mean, even Jesus was the time where he was, in tears and crying. So we have to realize that it's not a sin to feel depressed. Emotions are not a sin. Emotions are the caboose. They follow our thoughts. So we work to change it from that perspective.
So the next myth we'll mention, and this is definitely counterintuitive to what we do here, is that talking makes depression work, like bringing up the things or the issues that might, or the discovery of those things we talk about in depression makes it worse.
Yeah.
So.
And that is just the complete opposite from the truth. Especially sometimes people think of if they know somebody who's depressed, maybe even with a major depressive episode, that's when typically if somebody is suicidal. Typically that's going to come from having a major depression. And people think, oh, I don't want to mention that. Like they seem so depressed, but all the statistics show that a direct response, even asking somebody directly, hey, have you ever had thoughts of hurting yourself? That will actually lessen the risk of suicide, as opposed to avoiding it. People think, oh, I don't want to mention, I don't want to put an idea into their head, and it's just the opposite is true. So by talking it out, because Tony often says, better out than in, is a phrase that he uses all the time, and we believe you're only as sick as your secrets. So getting things out, by talking them out, again, with a therapist, with a clergy member, with a support group, there's all kinds of resources out there. So there's no excuses for somebody to keep it all in. But when you're depressed, that's typically one of the first symptoms is we tend to isolate. So that's why having some people, a best friend, somebody on your team to push you, or a therapist. If you got to pay somebody to do it, you do it to get you out and to not isolate, because you got to talk it through.
And I'll just because you mentioned that, I think a lot of people I've had why am I going to pay some stranger to talk to me about my problems? One of the reasons why people isolate and it becomes secret is because I might not want to tell my sister something because I'm afraid I'm going to lose that connection. So the people we're deeply connected with, it isn't always easy to share our secrets because we might be afraid that they're going to judge our situation. So talking to a professional allows you to speak to someone who is not going to have a bias against you. It's just going to be true listening and not judgment. They're going to evaluate where you are emotionally, what's going on in your life, help you see where you might need to move in one direction or the other to help bring the balance that we all should have back. So that's a really important point I thought I'd mention for you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so let's see where we're on. So if you start taking antidepressants, you have to take them or you'll be in therapy for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fear of a lot of people. It's like, I don't want to take a medication because I don't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. And that's a valid fear. Most people don't want to be on medication for the rest of life. All medication has side effects, whether you feel it or not. There's some side effects happening in your body. But it is, in fact, a myth. So we look here at Total Health Guidance, we look at everything we do, whether we're treating depression or relational issues or weight management or anything that we're treating, we look at it from two sides of the coin. On one side is the practical behavioral side, and on the other side is the therapeutic root cause side. Okay, so with depression, on the practical behavioral side, we're going to dive into this in a little bit when we talk about our treatments. We're going to get into all the different areas of self-care and the things you can do practically to kind of change those thoughts and guide your feelings in the right direction. But we also need to get to the therapeutic root cause side. And sometimes depression comes from major traumas in our life. Abuse or death or divorce or, things like that, or other things that we might not consider acute traumas, but what makes something traumatic is not so much what happened to us as much as it is what we believe about ourselves as a result of what happened to us. Okay? So if you were sexually abused as a child and now you're 50 years old and you think, well, obviously that's traumatic, and it certainly is, but what makes it more traumatic than the event itself is that belief that it was my fault, or I'm not worthy of love, or I did something wrong. That's what actually continues to have the traumatic response. So we need therapeutically to get to the trauma response. Somebody can have a very similar traumatic response or depression by being picked last on the kickball team in 3rd grade and having some people laugh at them. That's an experience that we can all relate to something like that, or walk not knowing who to sit with in the lunchroom at a new school. But if we come to a belief about ourselves, there's something wrong with me, that belief can have an equally traumatic impact as something as acute as physical or sexual abuse. So we need to deal with the therapeutic root cause side, and we do a lot of trauma work, or the grieving work, to deal with that. So when we're in treatment, we are not talk therapists here at Total Health Guidance. We don't just come and say, so tell me how you feel, and every week you come back and say, how you feel this week. Now, we're going to ask you about your feelings, obviously. That is part of therapy. But we look at it from where you are to where you want to be, and we are more project management focused. We're going to guide you, push you, encourage you, and get you through to where you want to be. And we look at all these different things in place. We look at medication as kind of, I don't want to say last resort. We're not against medication. Some people need to be on medication, and there are some people that, based on where they come to us, they need to be on medication right away. But we look at medication as a bridge to be able to do those other things, to do the self-care, to get the nutrition, to do the talk therapy, to work through the past traumas. If you need to be on medication to be able to function in order to do those things, then when you do those things, then you can wean off the medication. Okay, in most cases. Now, I know there are some issues where people need to be on medication, maybe for the rest of their life, but those should be few and far between. So we look at medication as a bridge, not as a crutch, that they're going to have to be on this for the rest of their life.
Yeah, and to that point, I kind of want to talk about, like you said, project management as it relates to the approach. And, wherever you're seeking care, you need to be mindful that there's different stages of working towards your health. The first is relief, the next is corrective, and then it's wellness. Mm-hmm. And so at the relief stage, you've got to do what you need to do to get out of the symptomatic presentation, okay? And then once you get there, the next step is corrective. So working back toward, working on the things that have been happening, but you're not necessarily having the symptom. And then the ultimate goal is to live in wellness and just pursue a healthy, well lifestyle, which, as it relates to self-care practices and stuff, we see that, a lot in wellness, because that's moving forward and things like that.
So I think that model, or that example right there, is exactly how we're looking at our treatment plans. Is when you first come in, you might need to come in more than once a week, but ultimately our goal is sustainable health, sustainable wellness. So the first couple weeks might be pretty intense, or 2 or 3 sessions, and it tapers off, whatever. And then the idea is, just like you go to your medical doctor, just get to the point where you're doing well over months, and just do a check-in once a year, twice a year. Really depends on once you talk with your counselor. But that is a good idea. What happens? Most people wait until something goes wrong, and then they wait until something's gone wrong for a while before they actually start seeking help, which it's harder to get out of that. So finding a way to get a checkup, is a good way, the whole person checkup. Go in, check your physical, check your emotional, check your mental, all of it, is a good way to kind of keep you on track. So it's something, if the counselor professional can recognize something isn't working or something, there might be something off track, they can guide you back quickly or a shorter period of time with less work involved. I
Yeah,
think that's
thanks,
helpful.
that's great.
Those are good points. Okay, so the next myth, if your family has depression, you will, and then if you have depression, your children will.
Yeah,
Kind of a genetic question.
yeah, and genetics certainly, genetics, we know that with genetics, that we have a genetic disposition to certain things, cancer, breast cancer or diabetes or things like that. But there's the whole field of epigenetics is exploding and is exciting because we realize we have the ability to change our genetics.
Yeah.
We're not trapped by our genetics. Oftentimes we inherit the habits of our parents as much as the genetics of our parents. So we cook the way our parents cook, we eat the way our parents eat, we believe the way our parents believe, and those things are all. Not only are those habits changeable, but actually our genetics are changeable. We can turn off these genetic switches through nutrition, through thought, through rewiring of the neural pathways in our brain. There's lots of things. So that's a great thing that, no, you don't have to be trapped. Just because your parents, whatever, died of 40 of a heart attack or had major depression or had breast cancer, whatever the case was, the good news is you do not have to carry them on, and your children can be set free from those things.
Yeah, you have control over that. Okay.
The last one is probably the most common one. I think it kind of ties into some of the other things we mentioned, but that it's all in your mind.
Mm.
And I think when most of us hear that, that's someone saying, like, really, like, they don't believe you.
That can be so devastating when you don't get the validation, right? We've all have had some feelings of depression, right? We've all had sadness and feelings of depression. And when you're communicating, sometimes you don't know where it's coming from. But when you're communicating, just snap out of it. Just stop. Don't be such a downer. When people don't validate, don't empathize. And empathy is such a key component to any kind of, it's the secret sauce in relationship counseling, is having empathy, being able to feel what your partner's feeling, but it's true in the therapeutic relationship as well. So I talked a little bit about some of the mental things that we're doing. Can you guys talk about it? Because it's not all in your mind, so it's also in your body and in your spirit. So you guys want to address that?
Yeah, so this myth is kind of funny because in some ways it is true, and I'll explain that. But there's a lot of co-occurring symptoms that happen with depression that are physical symptoms. But all of those symptoms are caused by messengers in your brain, so chemical messengers. So it's in your brain, but it's the physical part of your brain. These are the neurotransmitters. We've got our top 3, there's a lot of them and a lot of hormones that are involved with mood and thought process and well-being and all that stuff. But for the sake of this conversation, we're going to talk about serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. These are kind of the major ones. And interestingly, and a deficiency in each of these neurotransmitters is seen in almost all of depression, or even just like the sadness feeling. You'll see a dip in those neurotransmitters. And the hormones that they they stimulate. So the neurotransmitters do their job, and they do the job of the body through hormones. And so with serotonin deficiency, we actually see a change in appetite, as serotonin is a major part in the enteric nervous system, which is responsible for digestion. So a common physical symptom of depression is a change in appetite.
And that can go both ways. That can people can be don't want to eat, or they can.
Yes. So insulin's one of those major hormones that are involved in eating and all that stuff. And so you'll see dips in the blood sugar. If someone's not eating, it might actually make the mood more unsustainable because it's causing an imbalance. So whether you're eating too much or you're not eating enough, it's going to cause a shift in the balance of the hormones and the neurotransmitters. Because, even we'll talk about sleep a little bit later, we need cycles in our life, in our daily routines, to keep everything in balance. And if we're staying up late, waking early, having to have a stressful day at work, all of our hormones and neurotransmitters are now turned on top of each other. We're not really setting ourselves up for mentally for a good environment mentally. Any thoughts on the physical stuff, Tony?
Yeah, I think one of the things I think that's most seen in depression, the physical response. I think I'll speak a little bit about the eating because that's that's a fuel for your body. So if you're feeling depressed, and you're not eating well or you're not eating at all, the energy in your system is already taxed by the stress that depression usually brings on, extra cortisol in the body. It just has a compounding negative effect. If you're not feeding your body the fuel, your mind isn't going to work right, your physical form, the fatigue, which leads to sedentary behavior, which leads to more depression. It's easier to not get up and do anything. So they just kind of compound each other. Each thing that happens when we're in that depressed state, but people aren't thinking, hey, I need to eat and exercise because of my neurotransmitters. Just like, I just don't care right now. I don't feel right. I'm done. So those important factors, in terms of the body, the muscles are affected. All of it, like everything. It's a self-contained system, and we really can't separate the mind from the body and the spirit. You cannot. It's really, I think, when we talk about that and how we look at our clients and the issues we deal with, is we always try to look at what's going on with the client. They come in for a massage. I've had a client come in for a massage and they're crying in the middle of a massage, and it was just a regular massage, not really an emotional release work. And I was talking to him about what was going on. There were some family issues. I had this client sit with John one time, and it resolved whatever had come up. So it's just amazing when you inquire with people what's going on, and you let them know, hey, what's affecting your mind, your emotion, your relations, your finance, all of these things. They then make that connection. Oh, wait, I just lost my job, and I'm looking for work. No wonder I'm depressed. Just kind of obvious things that aren't obvious in that moment, because again, your neurotransmitters were off balance. They're on top of each other, as Covyn said. It's just a really obvious thing to us from this side, but when you're in it, it's hard to see it and understand it, maybe.
I'd say another thing on the physical side of things is 95% of your neurotransmitter, the serotonin, is produced in your gut. And so that's, I think, a really important correlation between the mind and the body, because your body is, inside your intestines, that's where these neurotransmitters are being created. And so if you have any sort of digestional, weakness or shift or anything like that, it's not really, you're gonna have problems. Like, to put it simply, there's a problem.
Yeah, there's a
The
problem.
system isn't working, and it's going to impact physically, of course, but we might not notice the physical symptoms. We're like, oh, I just ate a bad burrito, or so I ate something weird, or I don't know what's going on, it's no big deal. But we do sometimes notice the mental side of things, of like, or maybe we don't notice the mental side of things, we just feel like there's something wrong, there's something missing, I don't quite get it. And having that kind of, like I said earlier, holistic review of what's going on inside you and how it's affecting your mental health is really good.
Well, I was going to say stress, that's kind of a major component that can lead to depression. And if you're depressed, the stress can increase. So when you're looking and talking about stress, you have to think about the stress hormones, adrenaline, norepinephrine, and cortisol. So those levels, when they get higher in the body, they can start to affect your adrenal glands. So basically it's your fight or flight response. I know everybody's familiar with that. So if you're constantly in a fight response, your body's overwhelmed, your adrenaline's high, your systems are shutting down, things aren't operating at normal, because that's the part of us that's, when we're in danger, we have to move on. So I think when people hear this fight or flight, they think, oh, I wasn't attacked by a bear, or I wasn't almost, but it's somebody almost running you off the road, somebody yelling at you, a loud sound coming up from nowhere. Just, there's so many stressors in our day we're not even acknowledging. But your body inside is reacting to that based on your state. When we're not feeling well, those reactions are going to be more evident in our body. We might not be able to recognize them, but that process is still happening. So if you're constantly in that fight mode, that's really stressful literally on the body. It's creating stress on the body as well internally. So just being aware of how stress can then deplete your energy, which is going to exacerbate the feelings of depression or any type of mental state that isn't at our base norm. It really can affect that.
Yeah. And so like norepinephrine, you might recognize it because epinephrine is another name
Right.
for adrenaline. And so just like you were saying, like oftentimes as it relates to depression is the byproduct of living in that chronic stress.
Right.
Because when there's too much adrenaline in the system and cortisol and all those hormones, it's causing your blood pressure to rise because you might have to run. It's causing blood to go into the extremities. It's not causing blood to go to your digestive system. Because when something is coming at you, you don't need to eat or digest food. Those hormones aren't being stimulated, they're actually being blocked intentionally so that you can respond how you need to protect yourself. And so if that's continuously happening over a period of time, then it leads to a level of exhaustion. And I'm not necessarily talking about adrenal exhaustion, although
Right.
that's the extreme medical, clinical explanation for it. It's just a holistic,
System-wide.
exhaustion, which definitely affects the mental side of it.
So depression affects the mind, we talked about. Obviously, we talked about affecting the body, and it affects the spirit too. So when we think about mind, body, spirit, and when we think of spirit here, we're thinking of anything outside of ourselves is what we would call spirit. So that could be, obviously that can have a religious connotation, being a higher power, your relationship with God and your personal relationship and your faith, but also helping other people, mentoring, tutoring, rescuing kittens, but something else, even relationships, all these things that are outside of ourselves is what we're calling the spiritual side, your connection with nature. Well, when you're depressed, what I mentioned earlier, the first tendency is to isolate. And when we're depressed, we don't want to connect with our friends, we don't want to connect with God, we don't want to help other people, we become intrinsically focused. So we look down and we focus on all the things that are going wrong, the pain, the loss, the hurt, and that just kind of feeds that negative thinking. That engine is feeding the feelings, so the feelings are following, and we wallow in that. So we need to develop a plan, and I think in the last section here, we're going to be talking about practical things that you can do for the mind, the body, and the spirit.
If I could, can you do that demonstration again? Because I want to talk about how what you just said was represented physically. So show me again what you
So
did.
if I'm thinking like, I don't want to talk to my friends, I don't want to talk to God, I just want to think about, it's the pain and the hurt. And
So this is oftentimes you'll see the body will physically respond to how you're feeling by maintaining this. Now that state is not a natural state for the body to be in. So then it starts to affect your physical even more, your muscles, the structure of your body, and pain is just going to add to it. So a lot of people are, how is my mind connected to my, that is a great example. You start feeling bad, you're looking in, you're closing off to the world, and this is our safe place. We protect this place. So we're looking to protect our feelings, the emotion, whatever's going on. It is manifesting when our mind isn't working the way we would like, or in our normal base healthy state, that it's affecting us in so many ways. And if you see the pulled forward shoulders, the hunching, and a lot of people that have experienced trauma, specifically sexual trauma, this is a carrying position in their body. Like their body changes over time to the state.
just kind of
So we want to help clean it all out so we can get them up here where they need to live. It's really interesting. That was a good example of how the body can be affected.
we see it a lot with people, if they're depressed, they feel like there's nobody here to support me. I don't have anybody to support me. I have to do it all myself, and they get in that negative thinking. Oftentimes it'll manifest in low back pain, because they have no support. And so the connection between the mind and the body is amazing. And the people that feel like, that they carry everybody else's pain. They have to. I have to be the one that's strong. I have to be the strong one. I have to carry everybody. I'm always there for other people. Where do they tend to have that pain? In their shoulders.
A lot of moms, I find, have this trouble, neck and shoulder pain.
So we see people in the audience relating to that. So there's definitely that connection between the mind, the body, and the spirit. So what do we do? One of the things, remember I said we look at two things from two sides of the coin. So on the practical behavioral side of the coin, we're going to look at a self-care approach. We're going to take anybody in coming with almost any issue, but specifically with depression, we're going to develop a self-care approach. We are physical beings, so we're going to do physical self-care. And Tony and Covyn are going to talk more about that. We are emotional beings, so we're going to do emotional self-care. That's taking a bath, listening to light and candle. That's listening to music. That's any hobbies that you have. We're going to put together a plan and try to. You might have to fake it till you make it. We might need a little encouragement, but to read the book, to listen to the music, to see that movie. We are relational beings, so we do relational self-care. Okay, that's spending time with people that know your crap and still like you. You know, not that they're perfect people, but they're people that you feel better about yourself after being with them. So it could be picking up the phone and calling that friend, having coffee with a support person, talking to a counselor, but you feel better about yourself. You don't feel judged. But we're also spiritual beings, so we do spiritual self-care. And we put together a plan. What does that look like? Is that connection with a higher power? Is it more connection with nature? Is it helping other people, mentoring, spending time walking with animals, whatever it is? But we put together a plan, to help with all those practical self-care things. So that's on that side of the coin. From the mind, from the therapeutic root cause side, again, we're going to look at. Typically, with depression, we're looking at a therapeutic approach called cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's kind of what I referred to earlier, is our feelings follow our thoughts. So the cognitive is our mind, and behavior are our actions. So we need to change our thinking. We're going to change our mind and change our thoughts. We're going to come up with a new mantra, a new pathway to focus on. And we're going to tell ourselves these truths, and we're going to recognize false thinking. It may feel true, but the fact that no one loves you, no one is there for, we have to identify, is that really true? And we have to get a true thought, and the therapist would help work with you to develop that pattern, and so then the feelings would follow, and the behaviors would follow the feelings. So what else do we do from an acupuncturist perspective, from a massage therapist perspective? What are the other things for the treatment approaches that we would use for depression?
Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about the nutrition of things. And there's a couple basics that can be adhered to. Not just eat more vegetables, but eat more whole foods and less processed foods. Sugar, refined carbs, trans fats, these are all processed foods, and they're not doing your body any good. They're actually tearing it down in a lot of different ways. They're building that inflammation up.
They actually hinder your body's ability. You were talking about those, the serotonin, it's like the trans fats and some of the other processed foods can actually hinder your body's ability to make and produce the serotonin and the norepinephrine that we need, dopamine.
Yes, so so I guess the best way to explain it is through, if we were baking a cake, you want it to be the best cake in the world, you want to have the best ingredients. Your first thing you're going to need, and the mental health cake, so we'll say that, the mental health cake. So if you want the best ingredients, the top ingredients are neurotransmitters, serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine, oxytocin, all kinds of different ones. So how do we get the best of those neurotransmitters? This is amino acids. Your body has to be filled with the correct amino acids, essential fatty acids, and phytonutrients. And phytonutrients are vegetables. For those of you who hate vegetables, I'm sorry. Vegetables, you need them. But you need to be feeding your body on a cellular level, because neurotransmitters are cellular chemical communicators. So we need to be nourishing them. And in order to do that properly, those are kind of the major three things you need. I kind of wanted to mention some specific foods. And when I mention these specific foods, I want to have a disclaimer of, don't go buy, pounds of these foods and try to consume them to fix, depression, because this is a lifestyle thing. It's not I'm going to eat, a lot of this for the next week and then suddenly I'm going to be in a great place. But all of these foods help to boost and encourage the generation of neurotransmitters in your body. So the velvet bean is a legume. This is a good one because we talk a lot about, amino acids, and you find those in proteins and things like that. And for people who don't eat meat, it can kind of be a question of how do I get the correct proteins, how do I get these essential fatty acids. Velvet bean is a really good one. I'm going to kind of go quickly through these. Cacao or raw chocolate, so anything higher than 70% is going to be good. Different types of nuts and seeds, so Brazil nuts, almonds, walnuts, chia, hemp, and flaxseed, all really good. And they've got the fats as well as some of the amino acids. dark leafy greens, fish, chickpeas, eggs, broccoli, and of course, olive oil and essential fatty acids. But something else we kind of wanted to kind of briefly go over is supplementation. Like, something we have here is Juice Plus, and you can probably talk a little bit.
Yeah, so we're not a big proponent of selling things. We really want to get our nutrition from food. So we don't do a lot of supplements here. We're not against supplements. There are some good supplements out there, but primarily we want to get our nutrition from food. About 15 or plus years ago, my doctor told me about something called Juice Plus, and I wasn't really interested because I thought I was already eating pretty healthy and I was juicing. But one of the things that caught my eyes is it's got a food label on it. It's not a supplement. It's actually regulated by the FDA as raw produce. It has a nutrition facts label on it. And when I look at the ingredients, it reads like a shopping list. It reads like some of the things that Covyn just mentioned. Leafy greens like parsley, spinach, kale, broccoli. It has a lot of those phytonutrients in it. It's not a substitute for eating fruits and vegetables. I want everybody to eat as many fruits and vegetables as you can. The reality is, most of us don't get enough. All adults are somewhere, if you look at the current FDA recommendations, somewhere between 7 to 13 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, depending on our age and how much we exercise and so forth. So I eat as many as I can, but I use Juice Plus to bridge the gap. It fills in the variety, because the reality is, I don't like kale and I don't eat it very often, and I like beets, but I eat them once or twice a year. Some of the things like that. So I get the nutrition from all these fruits and vegetables and all those phytonutrients on a consistent basis. So having that the ingredients to bake that cake
Yes.
is really important. So that is something that is available. Tony can answer any questions. I know some people are interacting via Facebook, but if you can call our office. Tony's an expert on Juice Plus and can help you answer any questions about that.
So another thing that kind of is involved in the baking of that cake is gut health, which we talked about a little bit earlier. But one of the best things you can do for your gut health is having a great probiotic. And you can do that in supplementation form, or you can do that through having different fermented foods, kefir, different kombuchas, things like that. This is going to build your gut health, and it's going to help support the growth and production of those neurotransmitters that we need. Sleep, I talked about earlier, having like a great sleep cycle is important because all of your hormones are managed and regenerated and processed through that. Vitamin D, working on inflammation we talked about a little bit earlier, kind of reducing inflammation through food, through lifestyle, through massage. Acupuncture helps with inflammation. Yes, and then also exercise, of course. I feel like everyone always hears, depression, you need to exercise. Maybe a myth could be you just need to exercise. Because it's not true. Like, exercise plays a major role, but it's not going to, fix the depression. It's not going to fix everything that's happening mentally. It will help a lot. And one of the reasons it helps a lot is because it flushes your body with endorphins, which is another feel-good hormone in the body.
I think a lot of times people, when they are depressed, they hear this thing and they think, okay, when I'm depressed, I don't want to exercise. I don't want to connect with adults. When I'm depressed, I don't want to eat kale and salad. I want to eat junk food, So one of the keys is really starting slow and just taking some. That's why that self-care plan, we make it realistic. We make it specific, measurable, realistic, time sensitive, and it could be as simple, just take a walk around the block. Get down, do 5 push-ups. You might not be going to the gym for an hour and a half when you're depressed. Probably not going to happen. You may not be, but that's why I like Juice Plus, because it doesn't take a lot of energy to swallow a couple capsules, and you just need something, a little catalyst to get that train moving in the right direction, so that, okay, now I feel better, and I do exercise. And when I exercise, I do sleep better, and then I wake up and I feel happier, so I make better food choices, and we get that snowball again, or the train rolling in the right direction.
So I just wanted to touch base on, I guess massage and how depression, people like depression, how does massage help? So I would ask Mom in the group here is, what's the first thing you do when your child is hurting? Any of your children, if they've been hurt, what's your reaction physically? What do you do?
My reaction physically? I have go-tos, but I'm not sure it's a physical reaction. I do tend to check on them, verify that there's maybe something going on. It's harder to see if it's mine related. And then I go for medicine. But,
you caress all the time.
Well, I do
all
that.
the time.
That's
All
that's
the time.
that's the
Okay,
You
that's
do
the
it.
one.
I do.
And I
I don't
think-
think those are
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
It's
think
very
in those
nurturing.
terms.
So people, I think,
Yeah.
forget that touch is so important. I mean, touch is how we engage with the world, specifically when we're babies. Moms always, it's science has proven babies that are touched more are healthier, their immune systems are stronger. These are studies that have happened over years. So massage is just that. It may not be your mom caressing you, but there are things happening in the body that are why massage is helpful and why touch is so important. So just to give you an idea, for Oxycontin, which is also called the cuddle hormone, which I thought was kind of cute when I found that out, but it actually is helps you bond with your partner. It bonds during helps the child and mother bond during childbirth, and how that works in massage is it actually boosts the oxytocin levels in the body. So that's one way massage can help with that. So if you look at serotonin, that's the neurotransmitter that helps regulate mood and appetite, right? So if we can work with massage, it actually helps to improve that neurotransmitter as well. And low dopamine levels are associated with lack of motivation, low energy, inability to focus, which are all symptoms of depression. So I think a lot of people just think massage is just really like a luxury item. We work in combination together if that's what's needed. Who knows? Touch is just so important. There's so many ways I could go in and explain this, I think, and examples you can use, but one of the, I think, most primal things that we do when someone isn't feeling well is we want to give them a hug. That's like our first reaction. So I think that's the thing. Go for your first reaction. When people are not feeling well, just put your hand on their shoulder, talk to them. It creates connection. It's instant connection, not only through the eyes. Now I'm connected with her. It's just that empathy that John mentioned earlier is really important. So for someone dealing with depression, that's also a way to get a little bit of exercise. An hour massage is about 30 to 45 minutes of physical activity for the person getting the massage and for me as well. It's not working. So you're actually, which is helping to increase and flush out any toxins. So combined with counseling and acupuncture to maybe handle some pain management, the massage can help with the pain as well, but also increase the energy of the body to do what it needs to do. Because again, when we're not feeling well, we're depressed, we don't want to go to the gym, I don't want to get up and go to the bathroom, I don't want to eat, all these necessary things. So touch is really important. And massage, I think, is part of the self-care plan that we like to create. And it's also a reward. You should, when we're not feeling well, this is a way to maybe help yourself feel really good. And while the benefits may not always be visible or immediately recognizable to that individual that's not feeling well, if they continue with the self-care plan, it will start to affect, and they'll start to recognize this is really necessary, this is really good, and it does help the body change and manifest the positive energy, the balance that we need, and create more room for all that good stuff, and get dumping all that excess, again, better out than in. So let's rub those toxins out, flush them out, improve our nutrition and what we're eating, have our conversations with our confidential, reliable therapist, and get close and back to where we are into our basic balanced self. That'd be good.
I think another kind of, almost to dumb it down a little bit, like massage helps because it gets you out of your brain,
Yep.
and actually into your body, which is something really important with any sort of mental health, related illness or anything like that, is it's reminding us like, like John was saying earlier, I'm a physical being, and touch, you do need touch, that's an important part of it, so.
And the further that's actually a good point, because I think shutting off and turning off all that negative talk, like you get a massage, it really just allows you to kind of reset, and instead of focusing on yourself and all the, again, what's not working, is somebody else focusing on you and giving to you and feeding you while your brain is just, off and gives you some rest and respite. I think that's really beneficial, especially in a time of need where we're not feeling well and our energy's low. Just being able to turn off and give ourselves a little bit of love and support is really important to help us with our health and getting back to who we are, who we were, where we want to go. It's really important.
Well, we are just about at the point where we're wrapping this up. If anybody watching this on Facebook Live has any questions, feel free to enter it in, or in a minute we'll have the audience have these questions here. Obviously it'll be available on video to watch later. But we want to meet people where you are. So if you're struggling, if you're watching this, whether it's today or a year from now on a video, and you have depression, reach out, take the initiative to do something. For some people, just coming in for a massage may be what they need. For some people, they need to talk through their nutrition. They need to go through a nutritional assessment, come up with a customized food plan, and for some people, they may need to talk with a therapist. For some people, they may need all three or multiple things. For some people, they need more than that. If they're in a severe, major depressive situation and it's manifesting itself either through not only suicidal thoughts, but also self-medicating, addictions, or self-harm, or hurting other people when there's a lot of risk, we do outpatient intensives. We have sometimes people that come here and they pretty much live here for 20 or 30 hours in a week, and they're getting all these things in combined. They're seeing one therapist for the underlying trauma, they're seeing another therapist for the current presenting issue. They might be seeing that they're getting acupuncture for whether it's addiction or for the reducing anxiety or the depression. They're getting the massage to help deal with all. We do the emotional release, the trauma work massage, the boundary type massage. So we do all these things working in together. So we meet people wherever they are. And then some people, as I mentioned, need medication to be able to, in order to do these foundational things. Okay, and that's when we work with a team of physicians, and we have them evaluated for medication. We do use essential oils. Do you want to talk a little bit about the essential oils as a put you on the spot?
So yeah, we do have some essential oils here. We primarily focus on essential oils that have an effect on the emotional state. So things that we utilize to help people support if they're dealing with insomnia, anxiety, depression, ADHD, and we have different blends and remedies like citrus. We have a couple citrus essential oils here in the front, like lemon, orange. The more common thing about those is they're pretty uplifting. Just they're cleansing, antiseptic, and they're just really uplifting. So those combinations of scents, one designed specifically to help with depression, is called the elevation. But they would be, so we would, that's a sort of a substitute or something combined with medicine that can help. I know that John's been successful with clients getting off their sleeping or their insomnia medication using one of the oils. Again, we're not anti-medicine, but if you can find a natural way to deal with an issue or condition, I think it's always better because you don't have to worry about those side effects. So I utilize them in massage to create, depends on if it's pain management, to just help with relaxation. There's a specific massage that I do using 8 different oils for someone someone that's depressed or someone that's really stressed. Everybody I do that for completely falls asleep. Some of them snore. And that's really good. They're embarrassed when they wake up, but I'm like, no, I'm very complimented. That's awesome. If you can shut down and snore and turn off, that's kind of the goal. So some of the essential oils can be taken internally. We use some for nutrition, some for mental health counseling, some for massage. And I know that the acupuncturists use them as well too with some of their treatments. So it's just a different type of natural, way to kind of help deal with muscle pain. I mean, we have a different type of it's sort of like an icy hot, a natural icy hot, like essential oils. So it's just less of the chemical stuff on your body, on your skin. I think they're really amazing, and I like to use them and incorporate them as part of the treatment, so people can learn how to, take care of themselves a little bit with less medicine if needed, and just still be able to get the benefits of it.
Another type of, I'm sorry.
Just one of the things I was going to talk about was the long-term, or in terms of treatment with the natural treatment, specifically with massage and acupuncture. It is often better to have that boost up front. So a pill is power-packed full of, that drug it's going to hit you usually right away. I just put this out there for people to kind of know that with the natural therapies, and including counseling, it's not going to happen overnight. If you've been in pain for 10 years and you come see us, it's highly unlikely it's going to be gone immediately. But over time, if we can build up and create the next level, and get closer to that level of health and that heightened state of health and balance in the body, it will happen.
I was going to mention another type of oil that's gotten a lot of publicity recently is CBD oil, cannabidiol oil, coming from the marijuana plant. So with marijuana, you have the THC, which is the psychoactive component, and then we have the cannabidiol oil, which helps with the inflammation that Covyn mentioned. It helps reduce anxiety oftentimes, but it can be helpful with depression too. We use it probably more with our anxiety related clients, but sometimes depression and anxiety go hand in hand because we're anxious over being depressed and we're depressed about being anxious, and they're kind of distant cousins here, close cousins. So we use a pharmaceutical grade with our essential oils and the CBD oils. They're all pharmaceutical grade, so they have no THC. They're not going to show up on a drug test. They're not going to have any psychoactive component or results. But that's something we can talk more about as well. With that, any questions?
Yeah.
Yes, I know we only have a couple minutes left, so I don't know if there's any questions on Facebook or if anybody here has got any questions or comments. Do you want to add?
He answered a question that I had, so.
Like you got your questions answered?
Yeah,
All
You
right.
guys are really thorough.
Yeah, we talked a lot about.
So if you're not someone that's dealing with depression, but someone really close to you is, what are like maybe the top 1 or 2 things that you can actually do to support or help move them through that process?
Okay. So the question, just in case if you're watching on video, if you didn't hear that, the question was, if you're not struggling with depression, but somebody close to you is, what's 1 or 2 things that you can do to help support the process? Anybody want to?
He's excited.
So, I mean, one thing we talk about is just the empathy. So, talking to them. Don't pretend like it's everything's fine. And sometimes the mistake, I don't know if it's a mistake, is our motivation is good, but we're trying to cheer them up. You know, so we try to distract them and say, oh, let's go see a movie. Let's go. You know, we try to get them out of it. And most of the time people our sponge is full, we need to wring out the sponge before we can take anything else in. So just by saying, hey, do you want to talk about it? Can we talk? And just, man, what you're going through, that must really suck. I'm so sorry. I mean, it sounds like you're throwing gas on the fire, but it actually will have a positive impact by empathizing, let them know, man, sometimes just, wow, oh my God, what you're going through, that's a lot. And then encouraging them, you know what, man, that's a lot. I don't know how you're handling all that. You know, gosh, if I was going through all that you're going through, I think I'd want to talk to somebody. Would you be open to talking to somebody? And then finding them, there's all kinds of support groups. Obviously, you can send them here. There's no shortage of therapists and things around the nation. And there's opportunities for help. So empathizing, listening would be the first thing. You're gonna say
Well, I was going to say, all the things you said initially to not do would be great after you've listened. So let them say what they want to say, like, hey, so, you know, find out where they are, and hey, would you like to go to a movie, just have some fun? Like, but just shutting them down a bit, like, no, just get out of it, that's not good, but just having an ear. If you do you want to tell me what's going on? And just listen. You know, just listen, hear what they have to say, and then you can say, so, you know, would you like to go do something fun and relaxing? Would you like, just ask them what they might need in that moment.
Yeah.
After you've had the conversation, you've listened, you maybe extended an idea about some ways they could get help, like John said, a therapist, a group, support group, or something like that. But again, maybe doing something active could help increase their physiologically what's going on, so they might then feel better to actually make the choice from the suggestions you've had. I think that's really important. But listening is the key thing, I think, primarily.
If you wanna talk about it, let's go for a walk while we talk. Or you're just kind of like encouraging those things that, you know, being empathetic and being present is really important, but then also like encouraging healthy, you know, movements forward.
When you're talking, I think it'd be good to ask them to say, hey, would you like to talk about I'm here? But then ask them, what is it that you need from me?
Right.
Because sometimes, most often, when I hear my clients, I'm like, I can't talk to my mom, my sister, my brother, because they're giving me all this advice, and I don't want advice. You know, they just want to vent. They just want to be heard. Now, sometimes they do want. So, but ask them, hey, do you just want to listen? Do you just want me to listen to you? And just listen. If they say yes, I just want to be heard. Just validate and listen. If they want advice, you know, then give them advice.
And then just help being that check-in person for them. We talked about like during the wellness aspect of it is like maybe you invite them to be someone that they can check in with. Like, hey, like periodically, can you just ask me XYZ? You know, how are you doing physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever.
Very good.
And the last comment I have for that is just be for yourself, be aware of what you can handle. If the conversation leads immediately into something you can't handle, it is actually going to affect them. If there's, you know when somebody's aware when they're talking, if they're paying attention or if they're feigning interest. So just take care of yourself as well at the same time. And if you can't handle it, you know, just make a suggestion or something like that. But you know, being able to listen and hear and empathize as well. But don't feel like you need to offer them an explanation or what to do or advice. And then also for yourself, if you this is really, a little too intense for me, I'm not sure how I can help you. Maybe ask how you can support them, but just also be careful where you are in it and how you're taking it in so you're able to do that. So.
If you're in a chronic relationship, like if you're married to somebody with major depressive disorder, or you're in a relationship that you're the primary caregiver of somebody, and it's really critical for you to get the support. You might not be going through it, but you need all the very similar things we talked about here. You need a self-care plan because you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself right before you help the person sitting next to you. So it's going to be really important for you to get them help. Well, we are out of time, so we're going to end it here. Obviously, we're open Monday through Friday here, 8 to 8. So if you have any questions, if you're watching this and you have any more questions or think of other things that you thought of or want more information on any of the services or products we talked about, feel free to call us here. We'd love to help out with even a free consultation with any of us here. We'd do a free consultation to answer any additional questions you have. So thanks so much for joining us here. Thanks so much for joining us live, and have a great day.